Considering a move to Kansas City, you're in good company. Recently, there's been a noticeable uptick in people choosing KC as their new home. The reasons vary. Some are drawn by the lower cost of living, others by job opportunities, or simply in pursuit of a better quality of life. I guess you could say Kansas City, our cherished Midwestern gem, is no longer a well-kept secret. It's even gaining national recognition, with Wall Street Journal and Lonely Planet naming it as one of the top destinations to visit in 2024. Yes, Kansas City is truly having its moment in the spotlight. However, life in KC might not be exactly what you'd expect, and in this video, I'll be diving into the aspects of living in Kansas City that often go untold. As someone who moved here from Denver 4 years ago, I've experienced firsthand what it's really like to live here, and you won't find these insights just by Googling. What you need is an insider's perspective, and that's exactly what I'm here to provide. If we haven't met yet, I'm Kyle, and I make videos about everything Kansas City, living here, eating here, and playing here. Now, as I mentioned, 4 years ago, I left the Rocky Mountains and returned to my true home right here in the heart of the country. I'm also a licensed real estate agent, and I help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest here in Kansas City. But that's enough about me. Let's jump into it. All right, let's get one thing straight. I want to be super transparent in this video. I'll admit it, I'm biased. I absolutely love living in Kansas City. My journey's pretty common around here. You see, I'm like many Kansas Cityans who left only to find myself drawn back by the unique charm of this city. But hey, I get it. What works for me might not be your cup of tea, and the whole point of my videos is to help you to make the best decision for you, not to push you towards a choice that doesn't fit your needs. So with that in mind, I found a Reddit comment of someone who moved here from New York to offer a different perspective before we hop into my list. This Reddit user was responding to someone that is considering a move here, and she says, NYC native here, moved here about 1.5 years ago, and I am loving it. When I first moved, I lived in the downtown area. Downtown was all right, but I personally was itching to own a home, have some more space, so I made my way out to the burbs. Friendly folks here, food options will always feel limited compared to NYC, but we have some incredible restaurants here in KC. Driving is a must, and if you're single, KC is known to have a tough dating market, but I can't recommend enough to my friends and family how great KC and the Midwest is. Now, personally, I agree with many of the things that she said here. They're all big reasons why I decided to move back from Denver. Well, maybe not so much the difficult dating scene, but things have changed. So let's get into the things that they're not telling you, and stick around until the very end for one of the biggest changes that have taken place since I moved here in 2020. So the first thing on our list that we need to talk about is the weather, because this impacts some of the other things that we're gonna discuss later on. When I moved back from Denver, the weather was one of the things that I was most concerned about. Denver is dry and Kansas City is not. It is very humid, especially during the summer months. But there are some benefits to having that humidity that I didn't realize until I got back. For example, swimming. So when I went swimming in Denver, whether it be a reservoir or a pool, you don't realize until you're getting out of a pool and it's freezing cold. If there's any shade and you get out and you're wet, think about it, that water is evaporating immediately, and so it's a race to the towel to dry off and get warm. And that's something that you don't have to worry about here in Kansas City because, well, in the summer months, we get a ton of humidity. We're talking 75% humidity on average. So when you get out of the pool here, you can almost air dry, and sometimes it takes quite a while for that water to evaporate because of how humid it really is. Another thing about the weather here and the landscape really in Kansas City is that our spring and fall months and even the summer are gorgeous. We have tons of greenery, lush greenery. In the spring, you have flowering trees like dogwoods and redbud trees, and that was something that I really missed when I lived in Denver for 10 years, and I didn't pay much attention to before I moved to Denver because I was, you know, a child and in my mid-20s. And when I moved back from Denver, yeah, I really missed the mountains, but the first thing that I noticed was how lush and how beautiful everything was here compared to Denver. But my favorite months here in Kansas City are April and May, when you have all the flowering trees, in September and October when all of those leaves are changing. You get a kaleidoscope of colors, the reds, orange, yellows. It's so beautiful. Another good thing about those months is that's typically when your energy bills are the lowest. In a lot of houses around here, they actually have attic fans, and this is something that a lot of my clients who are moving here from other areas aren't super familiar with. So what it is it usually is on the second floor of a house, and when it's mild or temperate weather outside, you can flip that thing on, open a bunch of your windows, and it just pulls the air in from outside, sucks it through the attic, and then it goes out through your roof ventilation. And this is a really cool thing in those months where, you know, we have 70-degree days, because you don't have to run your AC, you don't have to run your furnace, and typically that's going to yield you the lowest energy bills of the entire year. My average energy bills during those months is less than $100. Now, winter is the one that I always complain about, but to be honest, with the exception of January and February, it's not as bad as I initially thought. We were still out playing basketball in November and December last year. Now, that being said, it does get frigid cold during January and February here in Kansas City. Just last week, we had a week straight of negative temperatures, and a lot of people's pipes froze. A couple of our toilets, the water lines froze so we weren't able to use all of our bathrooms, which was a little frustrating, but we were lucky enough to not have any pipes burst. And while we don't get a lot of snow, when it does snow, that stuff sticks around for a really long time. You get a lot of overcast days, you get that humidity, so the snow doesn't melt nearly as fast, and we have piles of it kind of sitting on the sides of the road. It turns to that gray, black looking, almost like asphalt looking on the sides of the roads. So it's not the greatest thing, but we also get below the national average for snowfall. We get about 20 inches per year. And while we don't get a lot of snow, we do get a lot of precipitation in the winter. With that Arctic blast that we recently had, we did have some freezing rain, and that's where things can get pretty sketchy with the roadways. But listen, there are 2.2 million people that choose to call the Kansas City Metro their home, and there are a lot more people moving here by the day. Is the weather perfect? No, but what I've heard from several people who have moved here from California or Las Vegas is that it's just not that bad. This next one is kind of related to the weather, or let's say the weather can greatly impact it, and that is the things to do here in Kansas City. Now, this is something that I see get posted frequently by locals on Reddit or other forums, and that is that there isn't anything to do in Kansas City. Now, honestly, I thought the same thing before I moved, and I think that it had more to do with the stage of life. When I was younger, you know, a lot of what I did was like go to concerts, but I felt like Kansas City was just lacking in that department. But also, there's just a lot more to do here in Kansas City than there was 10 to 20 years ago, and it keeps getting better and better. Check out what the New York Times had to say about visiting Kansas City in 2024. No doubt, soccer reigns supreme. In March, the Kansas City Current will unveil the first stadium built for a National Women's Soccer League team. And Kansas City holds bragging rights as the sole Midwestern host for the FIFA World Cup in 2026. But other headliners abound, with new lures for budding bookworms and adventurers. Opening in March, the Rabbit Hole Museum will showcase a century's worth of American children's literature with immersive and interactive exhibits. Young thrill seekers can soar up in the new 150-foot tall wheel at Penway Point, a new entertainment district. And beginning in June, visitors can get their kicks at Rock Island Bridge, a reimagined railway bridge that will offer dining above with kayaking, canoeing, and paddleboarding below. Now, I've done a ton of content on Rock Island Bridge and Penway Point. You can actually go and watch the Penway Point tour here, and those are two things that I am super excited about. But the Rabbit Hole is another one that I can't wait to do with my kids. Now, as far as some other activities that I enjoy doing with my kids, especially in in the winter months is going down to Union Station in Science City and just letting them go buck wild. There are so many activities for them to go and just let loose, and they're all interactive and very engaging, and it's a great way for them to get out and burn energy. We also have Wonderscope Children's Museum, which is in South KC. I've had a membership there for a year. Last winter, when we were just going nuts trying to get out of the house and find some activities to do, that's another one where they have a lot of interactive spots for the kids to go and play and really use their hands and get involved. Now, during the warmer months, I absolutely love going to the lake. I love that lake life, and we have a ton of them. Everything from fishing to water skiing to just swimming or hanging out on the shoreline with a brewski. That is one of my favorite activities to do in the summer. But then we have Loose Park, which is a 75-acre park right in the middle of South Plaza. It has rolling hills, these big mature trees. You'll always find people out there with a hammock hung up or a picnic blanket, just soaking in the good weather or taking in a book. And then you have a 900-acre botanical gardens in Powell Gardens, which is just east of Kansas City. We have the Kansas City Zoo, which is amazing. I definitely recommend getting the train pass and taking that around. And then as far as outdoor music venues, we have the Starlight Amphitheater, where we get huge national acts through there, and it's a great place to go and enjoy an outdoor concert. And Grinders downtown in the Crossroads is one of my all-time favorite music venues as well. And then we have museums, the Nelson Atkins Museum, whether you want to spend the day inside to beat the heat, or if you have a beautiful spring or fall day and you want to just go hang out in Sculpture Park, again, throw down a blanket, throw a frisbee with a friend or a football. It's a great place to go and spend the day. Now, something else that you need to be aware of is all the unique quirks about homes here in Kansas City. First, let's talk about historic homes. Have you ever seen a stone basement? They can be pretty scary looking, and especially if you're coming from somewhere where you've never seen one of those, or they just don't exist because you don't have historic homes. For example, in Denver, I never knew what a stone basement was until I got back to Kansas City. And the thing about stone basements is they're made to weep. So you are not supposed to finish them, which a lot of people, they want to expand their square footage and have an entertainment space in the basement. Well, in a historic home, it becomes pretty difficult to do. It's not impossible. You can do a drainage system around the inside perimeter and make that work, but it does throw people off sometimes when they go down in the basement and they see water, or they see these big stones instead of a concrete foundation. And that's just something that you need to realize. In like the Brookside, Waldo neighborhoods, and Hyde Park and Midtown, most of those homes were built with stone foundations. However, we also have sump pumps, which is a good way to keep the water pumping out of the basement so it doesn't flood. Another thing about basements here that you need to look out for is radon gas. Now, radon is a radioactive gas that has no smell, color, or taste, and it's produced from the natural radioactive decay of uranium, which is found in all rocks and soil. It wasn't really recognized as a threat until the 80s, and it's super easy to remediate. In fact, what you'll find is that a lot of basements already have radon pumps, but occasionally we will come upon a house where they have a finished basement and there's some living space down there. Maybe it was built in the 90s and there is no radon pump. Well, we would want to go ahead and do a radon inspection as part of our home inspection process. And that usually runs you about $100 to $150. And the great thing about it is the pump itself doesn't cost that much. And because it's a safety and hazard concern or issue, that's typically something that we can negotiate with the seller. But at the same time, the cost of it is usually between $750 to $1,000. If for some reason the seller is unwilling to do that, it's not the end of the world. But again, that's just something that a lot of people who are coming from like California, where basements are very uncommon, they get here and they're just surprised by that. Now, another thing that you'll notice about homes here is algae buildup, especially on the north wall. Now, I was a contractor for 15 years before getting into real estate, and it wasn't ever an issue when I lived in Colorado because, again, there was no humidity, so that wasn't anything that we ever really experienced. But once I got back here, I started to notice that a lot of these houses, it looks almost like mold, especially on vinyl. For some reason in the Midwest, there's a reaction between the vinyl siding and the climate here that just creates that mold and algae buildup. Now, it is something that you can take care of with regular maintenance, and most of it just involves spraying it down with a hose. In some cases, you do need to power wash it. But again, people show up to these houses and they start looking at them, and it just really catches some folks off guard, especially if it's something that you're not used to seeing. Now, another thing that continues to plague Kansas City is the crime. Now, look, as a realtor, I'm not allowed to steer you in any direction one way or another, but I want to give you my take on it. So let me just start off by saying that over half of the people that we help move to Kansas City don't actually end up living in the city of Kansas City, and that's where most of the crime takes place. We're helping a lot of families that opt for a suburb of Kansas City like Overland Park or Lee Summit, and the crime statistics for those cities is very, very low. Now, I can't sugarcoat it. In Kansas City, Missouri, that's where the majority of the crime takes place, and a lot of it is targeted. Now, I don't say that to downplay it, rather than to give you an accurate representation of what's really at play here. And it's not something that I'm proud of. A big part of Mayor Quinton Lucas's platform, especially to get reelected for this next term, was curbing the crime. Now, the most powerful thing that you can do is educate yourself. Do your research. A website that I often recommend is www.neighborhoodscout.com. It's great for their crime map feature. On that website is phenomenal. You can pull up the heat map and it'll show you exactly the type of crime and where some of the neighborhoods you might want to avoid are. Now, the last thing on my list is the real estate market here in Kansas City, and this is something that has changed quite a bit since we moved here in 2020. And the reason I bring this up is because it's one of the biggest reasons that I hear for people moving to Kansas City is how affordable it is. Yet home prices have climbed dramatically since 2020. And one thing that I realized after moving here from Denver is the Kansas City market really lags the Denver market. So in 2020, when real estate was insane in Denver, I was looking at the value of my property there and was like, wow, I could sell this house and we can buy, something pretty amazing in Kansas City. And that's exactly what we did. And we got in right before it started to get crazy here. In the following year, after we purchased our home prices appreciated by over 15%, which is absolutely unheard of. The historical average of appreciation here in Kansas City is between 3 and 6%. Now, compared to some of the places that we're helping people move from, it is still affordable, especially if you're coming from like a California or an Arizona, a Las Vegas, heck, even a Florida, New York. We've helped several people move here from New York. The median home price here in Kansas City is right around $300,000. But what you have to understand is that real estate is hyper local. What is true of Kansas City isn't necessarily true for the surrounding suburbs and micro markets that we have here in the metro. For example, in Johnson County, the median home price is $420,000 and the average home price is $497,000. And when people start to come here and really dive into, the makeup and the geography of Kansas City, and they decide, hey, this is where we want to live because, it has the amenities that we want, or, it has a school district that we want to be in, then they really start to see the home prices for what they are, and that they were coming into it thinking that the home price was going to be around $300,000 and they can get what they want, where in reality it's more like $500,000. Now, keep in mind that these numbers that I'm using are the combined resale and new construction median prices, which the cost of new construction homes has increased by almost 100% over the last 3 years, and most of the new construction that's taking place is in the suburbs like Overland Park, Olathe, Lenexa, which are located in Johnson County. So that is going to impact the median and average sales price. But if you prefer a new construction home, that's something that you need to be aware of, because the median home price for new construction here in the metro as a whole is right around $515,000. So at the end of the day, it really just depends on perspective and where you're moving here from. If you're moving from another Midwestern city, well, Kansas City is not quite as affordable as what it used to be. However, if you're coming from a coastal area or somewhere like a Denver where I'm from, where the median home price is $600,000, well, you can typically get a lot more bang for your buck here. But either way, if you're considering a move to Kansas City, my team and I would love to assist you. So go ahead and shoot me a call, text, email, day or night. All my information is on the screen below. And if you're interested in exploring what the neighborhoods or what the suburbs are really like here in Kansas City, then check out this playlist where we've toured countless communities and you can see firsthand what it's like to actually live there.